What the heck is Fisticuffs? Hi, welcome to Josiah's Right, and a new segment I'm calling Cool Kickstarters because I didn't think of a better title. And today we're going to be joined by Fred Schwartz, who's going to talk about Fisticuffs, his Kickstarter. So let's jump on a Zoom and talk to Fred about Fisticuffs, his cool Kickstarter. Take it away from me, I guess, probably. Or Fred. We'll see. I haven't recorded the part with him yet. Why don't you introduce yourself, Fred? Tell us who you are and who are you and why are you here?
Absolutely. My name is Fred Schwartz. I'm a writer and comic creator, and I have a project currently on Kickstarter called Fisticuffs. Fisticuffs is a deeply personal story. It's about a functional drunk whose comfortable life is derailed when a one-night stand has deadly consequences. And that's what I'm here today to talk about primarily, but whatever else comes up, I'm down to have a chat. And so is my buddy Parker here. So
yeah, as Fred knows, we started talking about, dogs and losing dogs. And I think those are things, as a writer and creator, we're both, writers here. And I think that those things, they impact our stories. And even if you don't write about like the loss of a dog, I know that if you watch the trailer for which everything will be linked below, if you watch the trailer for Fisticuffs, you can see there's that emotional side, and just in that minute and a half of like there's this underpinning of this loss. And we've all suffered different kind of loss, but as I shared with Fred and people who watching this that know me know we just lost our dog Akira, and how that thing can affect you, and it may find its way into a story in an unexpected way. So you say it's deeply personal. Can you elaborate on some of that for us?
Yeah, without giving too many spoilers away.
No, yeah.
It's about a character who's deeply flawed. He's still got a lot of growing up to do. He's definitely got a lot of dysfunction in his life that we encounter, like kind of right from page one in Jump Street. We're kind of like in that character's world where he's kind of like paying for some mistakes he's already made. He still hasn't absorbed the gravity of it yet, right? He still has that like young man's mindset where kind of like where like we kind of are able to compartmentalize and recontextualize everything so that we're not at fault, or that we're the good guy, or that if it was just something else, it's just bad luck, or whatever it is. So in that way, like the story has been very much compared to things like Preacher and The Boys. And it absolutely is that. But what I wanted to do with this story is kind of honor that like kind of like fun, vulgar spirit of things that I grew up with. Very 90s, very Tarantino, very. I once described this project as kind of like if John Waters and Martin Scorsese teamed up to make a comic. I wanted to kind of take that kind of like extreme sensibilities, but kind of do a heartfelt story in that world. I kind of coined the term. Elevated smut, right? Like the way that you would go to a restaurant and you would get like you go to a fancy restaurant and you get like a Wagyu burger with like truffle oil and like on a brioche bun and stuff, but it's still like an umptuous burger at its core, right? Yeah. So I was trying to do that with this and kind of do like a personal kind of sophisticated story, with this kind of like sophomoric sensibility that I just love and kind of miss in stories. And I think you can do if there's something really sincere behind it and do it effectively.
I don't know if you've seen it. The film that kind of, not exactly that, but I kind of has some of the same tonally things, I think, is which won all the Oscars, Anora. And it had, if you've seen it, it had that like this heaviness to the world, that this is a realistic kind of dark world, but there was like the people in those situations also can be joyful and sad, like all these emotions that it's like not just the stereotypes of in that case she is a sex worker, a stripper, like you would like not the stereotypes of what that is, but like taking these conventions and spinning it into a slightly different way and showing them as people, which is, it sounds like what you're tapping into there. It's like, okay, you have this the John Waters Scorsese thing hooked me alone, but then it's like, oh, grounding it in not just the catchiness of that, but in that humanity.
Absolutely. And Anora was one of my favorite movies of last year. I absolutely love the way that he was able to, like you said, take this, premise that, seems at points it's very zany, right?
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
like,
yeah.
but at the end, it just sneaks up on you in a way that you're like, you didn't realize how emotionally invested you were becoming in that character, and the supporting characters as well. Like, that movie does a great job of building in a way that you don't realize until the end, and then it kind of
No,
like,
that you said that, like the supporting characters, like everyone seem like, which is maybe what happens in life. We all seem like we're this archetype of a person, but none of us are. And that movie, like, showed you that, and the way you said it though, that it snuck up on you, was really great. So, getting back to the fisticuffs, some of the things that I saw, like I love that what you said, the '90s kind of thing, because when you look at it, you have that vibe in that like the gritty crime drama elements with like the heaviness of like emotional trauma maybe there, plus a bit of humor, which I think is what you saw in Anora too. There was times where, like you said, it was zany. That's a great word for it. It's like, yes, there's times where like, whoa, this is, and then it's like boom, it hits you with the emotion, but in a way that it's not just like it works. It all flows together in a way that surprised me when I watched it. Because I had like seen, like Sean Baker did like Tangerine. I had not actually seen the Florida Project, but I know Tangerine to me felt like more just almost slice of life, whereas this was like still had the slice of life, but was like cinematic, and the colors could be vibrant, and the worlds, like it still like was grounded, but like in a way that he used the tools of maybe expanded budgets more in having made some other films. But with that, like that, one of the things that stood out for me was, like you mentioned, some of those '90s things, but when I looked at it visually, which maybe we talk about who you're collaborating with visually on this, I saw elements of, and the feeling of, certainly of the Max, in the '90s Max animated series, which was like this groundbreaking thing in my brain, and I love the Max.
It's starting to come back to me now.
I always come back to old Max. He really thinks he's some kind of flaming superhero. Not that the city couldn't use one.
For anyone who's coming here because they know Fred, check out my video on the Troll Halloween special, which weirdly features the Max from Image Comics, where Max was part of the Image universe and just like was his own thing, but yet would hang out with the Youngblood characters and sometimes in Gen 13 crossover and weird stuff. But the Max, I saw that, and then like some Spawn, the crime stuff in Spawn, especially though, like when Sam and Twitch would be in there and that stuff. So I saw some of that both visually and just the feeling of it. So can you talk to, maybe, I guess that's kind of two questions at once, but
yeah, no, but you're absolutely right on both of them. So we've also received a lot of comparisons to Sam and Twitch, 100%, and it's absolutely from that, right? Like, I guess for whatever reason, when I was a kid, I kind of lived like a sheltered life, but I like really wanted to like feel more adult. So I also gravitated towards like the Max and the oh God, what was it called? Oddities, right? And and all of that stuff. And of course, the big one for me was the Spawn animated show with like Todd McFarlane and his like pontificating before every episode.
What would you do if at the moment of death, a voice from the darkness offered you the chance to live again? Are you sure you know the difference between good and evil? If you had to choose a slow searing ride on Satan's carousel, strike a match and a fire starts, would you know the devil if you saw him? Do you believe the killer should be killed? And if we killed him, do we add to or reduce the evil in this world? I'm Todd McFarlane, creator of Spawn. Can you answer the question I've just asked? Spawn has to. Because you'll see it's time for a showdown, and Spawn still has some big choices to make. If he decides right, the battle goes to the good guys. Maybe. If he decides wrong, well, you know the answer to that, don't you? You will.
Man, like I love that, like kind of like subversive feeling, that like after 10 p.m. kind of like atmosphere, right? So like I definitely wanted to draw on that with Fisticuffs, and I also very much and by the way, Stan is phenomenal at that. Stan Yak, our artist, he delivers the way we were talking about like the supporting characters in Anora. The supporting characters in Fisticuffs, even the ones that are only in there for like a scene or a page or whatever, he draws them with like such animation and life, and like every character like looks like they could support their own story. So he does a great job, kind of building that, just like a world that feels real. And what you also touched on was I also approached this kind of feeling of like, with the feeling of like an indie film, like of the 90s, right? Like we all kind of tend to emulate our heroes to some extent. So I think I was kind of trying to be like, do my version of like a Kevin Smith or like a Pulp Fiction, not emulating their style, but kind of doing like one story that was kind of like me on a plate and just kind of like seeing what, how that would happen and, or what would happen with that. So I kind of approached it from like an indie film point of view. And the other thing that I remember Stan kind of remarked about very early on was, I tended to rely on a lot of reaction shots because what I think like sometimes in comics, I kind of, when you have like one panel and it's just like, 15 balloons of dialogue back and forth, I kind of feel like it at least says to you subconsciously that like nothing that they're saying is really important, right? It's all just back and forth, because if it was, somebody would react, so like I kind of approached the scripting of Fisticuffs the way that like people dissect that scene in Heat with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino, right? Where like it's not just interesting the information going back and forth. What's interesting is like Pacino says something, De Niro hears it, processes it in real time, thinks about it, and then responds. So we kind of did try to do like a very cinematic feeling with the art, and then Robert came in and did like the most like kind of like atmospheric colors. Like the comparison I use, like it feels like a Dario Argento film, right? Like each location kind of has that atmosphere, and
like I was interested in this stuff because there was times like is this watercolors or what? When I looked at some of the art, it like has this, and it gives it like this organic nature, but yet makes it look kind of like tangible in a way. Like it's an interest. Yeah, when I noticed that was that the colors just grab you in a way that maybe some people might not even like register. That was one thing I noticed instantly when you just like look at the Kickstarter page. You'll see that just pop out in a unique way.
And I'm so lucky to have found them too, and like just find artists that would kind of embrace this type of story, because like that was one of my first concerns when like I was like looking for artists, right? Was like it's weird, right? It's definitely out there, right? Like I mean, again, without spoilers away, it's Preachery and the boys, and that may not necessarily be for everybody. So I was kind of compiling like lists of artists of who I wanted to work with over and over again. And every time, like Stan was always at the top, like his style, for all the reasons we talked about, just felt like it would, work really well for this. But I was kind of afraid to ask him because I didn't want to get, rejected and, kind of kicked in the teeth. And, that would have really kind of like crushed me. And, fortunately one day, like I was following his page and he posted a, like a George Carlin video. And, it was kind of like, George Carlin has always been like kind of my hero, right? Yeah. And I kind of, once I saw that, it kind of like, kind of like calmed me down. Like, okay, we probably have the same sense of humor. Like he won't he won't like report me. He may think I'm weird, but he won't report me or anything like that. So then I kind of use that as like a reason. And I reached out and, the rest is history. And then from him, he recommended, Robert, because at one point I was considering not doing color at one point. Like I thought about doing it kind of like the way they, did like black, white, and blood kind of stuff later with maybe some like other hints of color and stuff.
Yeah.
And Stan was like, no, think about it. And it
and
made sense, obviously.
Like, yeah, okay, yeah, that was the right choice. Yeah.
Oh my God, 1,000%. Like that would have been like I mean, man, I can't imagine. Like, again, it's just, and that's the beauty of it, right? It was like, I had a plan, right? But a lot of it was kind of, trial and error and like kind of laying track down as the train's coming through. But in the end, like I think, that's kind of how like you get the best art, right? And like I kind of think that's if there's one thing I wished I'd done earlier was like not try to be so precious with everything and like be ready to experiment and have more fun, because in the end, like could not be more thrilled with what like I mean I can't imagine it of being any better.
Yeah. It's cool. Like the like seeing that art, like I have so I have a Kickstarter going right now as well, and I'm hoping like for there's I want to do in each issue a B story. I call it like B story brawl, where it's just like a fight. And it was inspired because like the X-Men Classics series would have a B story, and they were the opposite. I love them, but they were always just like a really grounded emotional story. It'd be like Nightcrawler and Wolverine talking.
Yeah.
And it was this character stuff. So I'm like, okay, my comic by intention was meant to be like more heavy on like a character thing, an emotional study. So I'm like, I want just a straight up fight, and every issue would guarantee to have it. But the artist is cool. His name's Rick Streak, and he's not like comic book. He loves comics, but his background is just other kinds of art that he's done and other work. But that watercolor style, it's similar to what he does when he does the colors, and it gives it just like an energy and a vibe that I think is unique, which is awesome that you found that. So it looks. That was the first thing I think when you look at a comic page, maybe the first thing you see is the color or not color, whatever that is, without registering it. And I think what's cool. So on my channel, I did a documentary about Zen Intergalactic Ninja, if you know the indie character from the 90s. And I basically interviewed a bunch of people that ended up being like a feature-length documentary, not by plan. But one of the people was Bill Mouse, who did Zen in the 90s, and he's helping me finish up my comic. Like, I needed a few more pages done, so it's a different artist as Bill finishing the pages. But point being is when I interviewed him, he was talking about, an artist on a project, and he's like, it depends on the writer, how much they give you or how much that you want them to give you. And he's like, I've worked with everybody giving me a lot or little, just he's like, whatever I need to do. But one of the things he talked about was being as an artist, you're kind of the cinematographer, you're doing all these things and you're collaborating with the writer to bring it all together. But one thing that I think that I don't recall if he said, but I feel like you're tapping into his idea is like artist as actor, as like performer in that way, that you might have it, and you have your intention, and then you're like, oh wow, they're bringing this to the table, and the color as a part of that performance, and it just kind of an aspect of it that layers, and especially what you're trying to tap in when you said the Tarantino, the Scorsese, John Waters, if you're trying to grab that cinematic thing, that's I think a part of it is that performance, and they're all known for getting at the very least unique performances. John Waters and Divine going back like then. Pink Flamingo getting unique performances, if nothing else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was very, like, my scripts were very, because my second time doing a comic script, but the first time I actually did very crude layouts and stuff. So I actually kind of did the paneling and everything. But this time, I remember I took like it was from like a filmmaking book, right? And it was like the different shots, right? Like wide shot, extreme wide shot, and so forth. And I like every shot, I was like medium, like I almost feel bad now in hindsight, but it was like, and I still do this to an extent, but it was like medium CU, like medium, like XCU, like medium close up. And it was like so like specific, right? And what I was trying to communicate, and I really didn't know any other way to do it at the time, was like, directing a camera, like start here, push in here, pull back here, because that's like very, impactful. Like you'll see in Fisticuffs, there's a lot of like, and I scripted this all the time, was like, eyes go close shot, eyes go wide, because like that's really, those like reactions are kind of, important, because I think it's like a stronger way of communicating than dialogue. Right? Like if you were to have that like set up in a way where it's like a panel going back and the character is like, what? Like, holy, whatever. Like it's okay, whatever. But like when you see somebody like react to something, like same thing in real life. I remember a film professor of mine told me about this a long time ago, about the importance of touch, like in film, right? Like if you have a scene where somebody touches somebody in movies, like that scene usually is important, whether it's a handshake or whatever, because like in our day-to-day life, we don't really touch a lot of people other than like a real, like, other than like a, hey, nice to see you and stuff. But like, it's, it's about the importance of that. And I was trying to bring that like to that about whatever. But like the thing that, the great thing about Stan was that like, he ultimately figured that language out and ultimately respected it. But like when he deviated, it was like such an upgrade that like, you
Like,
can't imagine it other, like, oh, obviously. And then you also, again, because you approach it from this like mindset, again, I think Tarantino talked about this, like how like you're the expert of your own story. So like, you know how, something, should go, but like you're not like kind of cognizant of your first kind of, time or two working with another artist, is that while you have like all your frames of reference that you're drawing on, they have a whole nother set. And a lot of times what they're drawing on is something that you're not even aware of that might be better. Or it might be something that they've been wanting to use, and they're like going to bestow that to you and put that in your book and make it better. Like that's a gift. That's a gift, and that's a benefit. And like you said, it's like working with an actor. Like, when usually when they like riff on something, it's because like they are in that character and they kind of almost know it better than the director at that point.
no, exactly. Yeah. And like you would want like a good actor, whether you're, Christopher Nolan writing and directing, or any writer director like to Tarantino's the world, even though like they know that character, you would want at that point where your actor, inhabits that so much that they are now the expert on that character. And it's like, you can trust, and it's the, the equivalent, well, I guess, an artist in this case. So I worked for Ed Saxon, he was the producer on Silence of the Lambs, and produced, one for producing that, produced the movie I'm trying to think of, Philadelphia, with Tom Hanks and Denzel Washington. But whenever I would work for Ed, I was obsessed with Philadelphia, and I said, Tom Hanks, great, his performance is great, won an Oscar, but he wasn't the best actor in that movie. It was Denzel Washington, because Tom Hanks gets to be like all the flourishy and like over the top, and he has that. And it was I would talk to him about that specific scene when Tom Hanks's character is, the opera scene, and the opera's playing and he's going through this, and you're watching Denzel Washington's character just react. And that's the performance. I'm like, that's the guy, like, not to take away, the Oscar from Tom Hanks. It's just like, to me, it's like, wow, that's the real performance. That's a performance that makes Tom Hanks's performance work, because his reaction to everything, like the way he reacts through that scene, I don't know that he says anything in it. And he goes back to his wife and he hugs her and holds her. Like, that's that whole sequence where, like, again, and I think maybe she says something and he like says something maybe softly back to her, but it's like almost no dialogue from him. And it's all that reaction. And it's,
do you mind this music? Do you like opera?
I am not that familiar with opera, Andrew.
it's cool to see when a comic book storytelling can incorporate that language, and like, the comic books have progressed from the 60s, which I still love, but into being more and more cinematic, but telling these character driven stories. It's cool to see it happening here with you. So
thank you. And it's two things about that. One, you're absolutely right about Philadelphia. Tom Hanks has like really the sexy part in that, right? It's almost like he's almost like the Heath Ledger Joker in that movie, because he gets to do all the flourishes and do the fun stuff. Denzel has to do the emotional arc and the heavy lifting, and he's kind of representing us, the audience. So it's really that's like a much trickier role in that regard. But what you're saying about the it goes back to something I remember. Like I used to watch a lot of Frank Miller interviews, and it goes back to something that he talks about how difficult it is in comics to control time versus film. Like in film, you can just set the camera down and like let people, you can just kind of like let the camera and people will watch whatever's going on, whether it's a time lapse or just people's anything like that. You're it's in real time. Comics, you have to be kind of clever and kind of like control that your own way. So, but the other thing is that like the thing that I like about comic book storytelling versus like a cinematic kind of storytelling is like the ability to like distill everything down to like moments, right? And kind of like fragment a story in that you kind of like get everything down to like one shot, right? Versus like you're able to like break things down in like a much more like deliberate pacing, I guess is what I'm saying. And I think that makes, for me at least, I prefer that kind of like style of storytelling, because you have more kind of like control, I guess.
Yeah. Like it kind of makes you think, like, I think it's some Frank Miller stuff, and then some of certainly what he would do with Sin City stuff, where it was much more minimal pages, or like you'd have a few images that, because like you mentioned how controlling the time, right? If someone could be like, flip page. But if you, and Frank Miller, what is at his peak probably at that, doing this, is creating whatever that little bit of an image is to keep you on it, to keep you on the next one, to keep you on the next one, and then you turn the page, where like you create that anticipation as you turn, rather than just like, I'm breezing through this. There's some people you'll never control, right? But like the best, like the storytellers where it's come visual with that, just the groundedness of the story. And I'm thinking into certain like images that I've seen, and I like some of the things in the Max had that, because there would be like, that gritty detail, and then there'd be like these other very simple, and then how like, and I guess that's another real quick, like going back to the coloring, like well, I mentioned the Max, but whenever they were in the Outback, how Pangea or whatever, when that had that almost more of a watery color look, whereas the real world had like, it just, the colors distinguished, and I guess more things that I sort of seeing visually in Fisticuffs. But just again, getting back to the controlling the pacing, like that, when you can do that well, it's a really powerful thing, that if you can stop that reader who has the control to just flip the page and make them engage and look, and I think one way to do that would be, when you have those reactions where the character in the story is giving that Denzel performance back, it fills that role.
Yeah, it's about connecting and like making like, I remember it was somebody talked about, I think it was Rob Zombie, talked about the most impressive thing about like and again, I'm just using these references, not trying to like, put myself in any kind of league here.
Rob Zombie
like that,
just
right?
hang out and talk
Right. Well, I was gonna say Rob. Yeah, that's what Parker was barking at. But no, Rob Zombie would talk about Kubrick, and how he said like the thing about Kubrick was he was able to like almost control your breathing, like, and your tempo when he does that, right? And that's like what like effective storytelling, in any medium does. And I think Frank Miller absolutely did that too, where like you're reading Sin City, like you're right, Sin City at times is very minimalist, and you could like flip through, like a flip book. But the fact that he controls your pacing and your reading, that you're fixated on this, like what otherwise would be like a kind of like a minor image in another story. He's able to like kind of like draw you in and kind of like draw and hold your focus in a way that is quite impressive. I mean, like that's why I think Sin City works so well.
Yeah, totally. And with that, and plus I think what your story has and what I try to do with my writing is have it grounded in character and people that are, whatever situation they might be in, that you believe them as people and you connect with them as people, right? Like I wrote a novel, it's young adult paranormal fiction. It's essentially a ghost story, but like my goal is like, okay, you believe that ghost is a person. You believe the paper boy Daniel who finds him is a person. Those are the fundamental like things that I think that then you can have fun with those fantastical worlds and things. Like it's got to be grounded, like Honora again. Like, I don't know that I'd be interested in a film of that subject, but I'm like, oh, this is getting, but then you found, oh, these characters are what then bring it together. And then, oh, I do care about this world because I care about the people in it. Right. And so it starts there though.
Yeah, it's definitely an empathy thing, right? It's that ability to like have something that we can identify with in our own life, right? Like that's why, there have been a million sequels and spin-offs of John Wick. But I think that the reason why John Wick 1 works so well is that simple, universal, like they killed my dog theme. Like, anybody can identify with that. Like, we are all sympathetic, even if we're, we don't have dogs. Like they are, beloved more than people. The idea of somebody like hurting a dog is like instantly something that we can all be like, oh my God, that person has to pay. And that's why that one works better than any other John Wick or any other one, because the simplicity of it.
I remember I read, so it was when American Psycho came out, and there's a scene in the book where I think he does kill a dog and he like kicks it and you just hear it like that. But in the book, when he kills the dog, I don't know that I think I stopped reading it. And it wasn't like, and if you read that book, it's very intensely violent with a lot of things, but it was the dog that did me when I read it. Like, it's like their human violence. I'm like, I'm not okay with it, but I understand the like, but and there's some very, very vividly graphic things that are in the book that you don't see in the movie because it would be way too intense. But when in the book, when the dog, I was like, I can't handle this anymore.
No, not there's. I don't watch a lot of the Netflix documentaries, like the crime documentaries anymore, because they are so dark. But the one called "Don't F with Cats," it
I
was
saw
about
that one. Yeah.
yeah, like I
But
mean
that idea, like, oh my
that
god.
and that's why he got caught. Like people were not gonna like let him do that and get away with it. They were like, this guy is a real terror. Like it's universal, and that's why it makes such a good motivation for like.
Let's get to the sort of the practical side. So with people like so specifically what are you doing with the Kickstarter, and what are like some of the like, reward potential, like if I back it, what can I get kind of thing. So what does that look like?
Absolutely. Right now we have books 1 and 2 up on Kickstarter. I decided to launch 1 and 2 together because I absolutely wanted to allow people to soak in the character, right, and like get involved and kind of like get inside their head. I think it's more effective that way, right? So books 1 and 2 are on Kickstarter now. We have cover A and cover B for both books. Cover A, all the cover A through the series done by the series artist Stan Yak, who's phenomenal. He's, many of you may know him from like his very popular covers on the Last Ronin, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle story. We also have a variant cover. It's a very cool Demon in a Bottle homage cover by Brian Silverbacks. And we have a really amazing cover by Boyan Kazalov that's kind of against type for the look of our story, but it's just an amazing design, kind of encapsulates some of the insanity that, typifies our story. In addition to those comics, we have a Not Safe for Work cover. We have T-shirts, magnets, all kinds of like little goodies and fun things, digital rewards. I've also offered incentive involving my very first comic, Hard Body, which was about it's like a kind of a one-shot that we will get back to it one day after Fisticuffs is a huge success, but it's about a self-conscious scientist who creates a Frankenstein body for himself out of the best parts of bodybuilders. So anybody that's at a digital tier right now that chooses to upgrade to a physical tier will get a free copy of Hard Body as well. So that way you get 3 comics for the price of 2. And we have about 4 days left on the Kickstarter. We end on Friday, March 28th at 2:55 p.m. So anybody that was on the fence, I urge you to get in on the ground level now. This is your only way to secure a first printing of books 1 and 2. And even if you're hesitant, we have very affordable digital copies as well if you want to test drive us first, because books 1 through 6 are all drawn. Once 1 and 2 are fulfilled, we're going to launch right into book 3. So there will be a chance to get on board again, but we want you on board at that first ground floor to enjoy this with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. I'm excited. It looks amazing. I'm excited to dig in and happy to share it. And I just love the references, not the references you have, but like, the sort of touchstones of things that inspired it, to talk about that and to, just see the visual style and to, get insight into your process in creating it. And I appreciate it so much. So thank you for joining me, Fred. Any final thoughts? You kind of pitched it. Anything else you wanted to add?
No, you have the link to the Kickstarter below, right?
Link will be below, and you can find it here. As just a frame, as it gets posted, it'll probably be 3 days, because this will post probably, as we record this, it's Monday. This will be posted probably Tuesday morning, maybe Monday night, but probably Tuesday morning. So Perfect. People will be seeing it with, that'd be Tuesday, the 25th, and it ends on the 28th. So as you're watching this within that time frame. And if you're not getting it then, hopefully you are. If you're watching this in the future, though, if you're watching this now, support this now. But if you're watching this in the future, just follow the links below for whatever. If Fred has anything new going on or whatever's current, I will do my best to update those links as well, so you can stay up to date on Fred via the description below. But thank you again so much for joining me. I appreciate it. I love talking comics and movies and stuff anyway. So, hopefully help you share with a few more people here. That's an extra bonus.
I had a blast anytime. I would love to come back and do it again. Thank you.
Awesome. So thank you so much to Fred for joining me. That was awesome. I love talking comics and I love learning about new comics. And if you can, back Fred's Kickstarter today. As of this posting, you'll have about 3 days, the 28th of March, to get in on that. So hop in on that, and of course support mine too. So, but support us both if you can. But definitely check out Fred's right now. Mine has another couple weeks on it, but right now go and back Fred's project. And thank you to Fred for joining me. And this was our first ever cool Kickstarters. Even though I did a couple videos with Kickstarter people before, I think at least 1 or 2. But this is the first in hopefully a series, because it's just fun to talk comics. All right, thanks for watching. Hopefully new videos coming soon too from me. They are. I have one written right here. My laptop right there. Bye. And thanks again, Fred. See you next time. Oh, and I always forget this part, but subscribe, like, and comment. It really does help grow the channel, because that's the only way it's going to grow. If you like these things, comment and subscribe. So those things all push the video out there. So do that to help out me and help out Fred with this Kickstarter, and you'll find the link below. Bye again.